Murder in 10 Easy Lessons by Fredric Brown. There isn't anything romantic about murder. It's a nasty business, and you wouldn't like it. Yes, take a murder and take it apart. You'll find it about as pleasant to dissect as a several weeks dead frog. The smell is pretty much the same, and you'll be in just as much of a hurry to rush to the incinerator with your subject. You can quit reading now, right here. If you don't, remember, I warned you. You wouldn't have liked Morley Evans. Few people did. You might, incidentally, have read about him in the paper, but not under that name. Duke Evans was the name he went by. Later, as a boy, they called him Stinky. Sounds like a joke, that name Stinky. Usually it is, but not always. Occasionally, kids show an uncanny knack of picking nicknames. Not that he smelled physically. As a boy, he was required by his parents to bathe his body at reasonable intervals. As a man, he was dapper and well-groomed in a greasy sort of way. Maybe I seem to be too prejudiced. He wasn't really greasy, but he did use hair oil. We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. Back to Stinky Evans and the first lesson. He was 14 then. He ran with the gang who used to raid the dime stores every Saturday afternoon, coming out with their pockets stuffed. Most of them were rather good at it, and were seldom caught. Harry Callan was the head of the gang. He was a little older than the others, and he had connections. He could take a conglomeration of $20 worth of packaged razor blades, phonograph needles, and the like, and turn it into $5 cash. With that ability, and with his fists and his advantage in size, he ruled the gang. You might say that Stinky Evans' first lesson in murder came the afternoon when Harry Callan knocked the hell out of him. For no particular reason, just that every once in a while Harry beat up one of his satellites to be sure they'd stay in line. It happened in the alley behind the gem bowling alleys, where some of them set pins once in a while. It started with words, mostly Harry Callan's words. Then Harry wailed into Stinky Evans and wailed the tar out of him. It was a new experience, for Stinky's only fights had been with kids smaller than himself. It didn't last long. When it was over, he lay in the alley, half sobbing, half cursing, with blood running out of his nose. Not really hurt. He could easily have stood up again to take more. But in spite of the blind anger and hatred in him, he knew better. He knew he was licked. So he lay there, and his hand closed around the cobblestone, and that was when the little devil got into his mind, and he picked up the cobblestone. Kill, something told him. Kill the rat! It didn't lead to anything. Harry Callan kicked the stone out of his hand, kicked him in the face, and broke 3 of his teeth, and then turned away into the back door of the gem bowling alleys. It wouldn't have led to anything anyway. He wouldn't have thrown the stone, or at any rate he wouldn't have thrown it at Harry Callan's head. He'd have weakened because he wasn't ready for murder yet. After a while, he got up and went home. If marriages are, as they tell us, made in heaven, then murders must be made in hell. Of course, nobody much believes in hell anymore, not, that is, in a concrete hell with little red devils running around with pitchforks and that sort of thing. But there must be a hell, just the same, for that is where murders are made. To explain the build-up of a murder, you've got to believe that much. And since we've got to have some kind of a hell, let's stick to the classical model. Since we're going to postulate a hell, let's make it good. Little red devils and all. In other words, let's shoot the works. Let's imagine a little red devil chuckling gleefully while Stinky Evans was walking home from the alley behind the gem. Let's imagine the little red devil talking to the big boss himself. Good material, boss. A nasty little punk, if there ever was one. He'll make the grade, boss.
You gave him the first lesson.
"Yep," said the little red devil, "just now. A few more from time to time, and he'll come through." "All right, he's yours. Stay with him." "You bet, boss," said the little red devil. "I'll stay with him, all right. I'll stay with him." That was Stinky Evans at 14. At 15, he got caught stealing a spare tire. He spent a night in the bullpen before they found out he was underage and switched him over to the juvenile authorities. In the bullpen, he got talking with the four-timer, and they got around to shivs. It was dark in the cell, except for the pattern made by the bars of the doors upon the floor. A pale yellow trapezoid with narrow black parallel stripes. A cockroach started across it, and a Bigfoot in prison-made shoes went out from the bunk and squashed the cockroach. "If you ever stick a shiv in a guy, twist it," the four-timer told him. "Lets the air in, and he flops quick. Hasn't time to yell or scramble any eggs for you. See? That's why a wide blade's best. Lets in more air when you twist. Those damn stilettos ain't no good. You gotta hit the heart or else stab the guy half a dozen times." There was more. It was quite a lesson. Stinky thought about Harry Callan. Down the corridor, a drunk with the DTs was yelling like hell because tarantulas were after him. Stinky Evans shivered. They gave him probation on the tire theft. Before that was up, though, he got in trouble again, and this time took 6 months at the reformatory. That was a good 6 months. He learned plenty there. Without boring you with the unpleasant details, let's count it as lessons 3 to 5, inclusive, and consider ourselves conservative. He was 15 when he got out, but he looked older. He felt older. He'd decided not to go home. Going home meant he'd have to take a job and keep reporting to the juvenile authorities how he was getting along in it. They'd keep checking on him all the time. The hell with that. He went home only long enough to sneak out some clothes and get the rent money out of the chipped teapot. $25 it was. He hopped a rattler and got off when he saw the shacks working along the train at Springfield, the division point. He took a cheap room in Springfield and cased the town. When most of his money was gone, he went back where there'd been a Boy Wanted sign in a pool room window. It was the Acme Pool Parlor, run by Nick Chester. Maybe you've heard of Nick Chester. You'd know of him, all right, if you ever lived in Springfield. A swarthy little guy, but smooth. He wore $200 suits and smoked 50-cent cigars, lived in a swank mansion out at the edge of town, and drove a custom-made car. All the trimmings, if you know what I mean. All out of a little pool room that maybe took in $20 or $30 a week. Nick tilted his $20 fedora back on his head and looked Stinky Evans over with eyes that didn't miss any tricks. "How old you, kid?" he said. "20. Been in stir, huh?" Nick didn't wait for an answer to that one. "Okay by me, if you ain't hot." Stinky shook his head. "What's your name?" Nick asked. Stinky decided that. "Duke," he said. "Duke Evans." "Okay, Duke, you rack balls for a while," Nick said. "When I get to know you better, maybe I can give you something else. We'll get along." Duke went back by the pool tables. He watched Nick Chester, and he knew now what he was going to be. That was for him. A 2C suit with the white carnation in the lapel, expensive cigars, a blank but knowing pair of eyes, and a pocket full of hay. Power. That was for him. He'd work for it. He'd steal for it. He'd even commit. Maybe there was rejoicing in hell. I mean, of course, if there is any such place. Things were going swimmingly. It was all too obvious that the little red devil was on the job. "He's coming along fine, boss," said the little red devil. "Just had the 6th lesson, you might say. Another year." "Not so soon. Let him ripen. Be sure of him." "He'll graduate, boss, cum laude. But you mean I gotta wait 2 or 3 years yet?" "Let him ripen. 5 or 6 years." The little red devil gulped and looked aghast. "That long? Oh, heaven!" so they had to wash his mouth out with brimstone. Call it the 7th lesson at 18. Duke Evans was beginning to look like Duke Evans. He wore only a $30 suit, but the trousers had a razor edge to them. He wasn't rocking balls now, he was making collections. Small ones, but lots of them. That was Nick's system and his strength. A finger in 1,000 small pies. One at a time, Duke was learning about those pies. He went into the florist's shop on Grove Street, walked briskly on through, and found the little florist alone in the back room, making up a wreath. Duke grinned at him. "Hi, Larkin, your dues, $40. The little man didn't smile back. I can't afford it. I told Mr. Westcott of your association. Talked to him on the phone this morning. I've been losing money since I started paying." Duke quit grinning, and his eyes got hard. "I got orders to get it, see?" "But look, I haven't even got $40. I haven't paid all the rent yet. I can't." He'd stepped backward, and there was fear in his face. That was a mistake. Nobody had ever before shown fear of Duke Evans. And the florist was a little guy, too. The little Mark was scared stiff. It wasn't Duke's job. He could have gone back and reported. One of the muscle boys would have been sent around, but it was so easy. He gave Larkin the back of his hand across the left side of his face and knocked his glasses off, then smashed the palm of his hand across the other side of the face, stepping in as the florist stepped back. Then again, rocking the little man's head back and forth before he stepped in with a hard jab to the pit of the stomach. Larkin doubled over and retched. Duke stepped back. "That was a sample. Still think you can't rake up $40? Duke got the $40. On the way back to headquarters, he bought himself a cigar. He didn't like the taste of it as well as cigarettes, but from now on he was going to smoke them. On his lapel was a white rosebud he'd taken from a vase on his way out of Larkin's. He got his shoes shined too, though they didn't really need it. He felt pretty good. Nick Chester looked at the white rosebud. His left eyebrow went up 0.5 millimeter, which wasn't enough for Duke to notice. Duke got friendly with Tony Barria, as nearly as anyone could ever get to being friendly with Tony. Tony was a little guy too, like Larkin had been, but Tony wasn't the kind of little guy that you shoved around. Tony was a torpedo. He was cold and tense, and he moved with a smooth grace that seemed jerky because it was so fast. Nobody ever felt at ease with Tony, really. You sort of got the idea that if you clapped him on the back, he'd explode. Maybe they tailored that word torpedo just to fit Tony Barria. But shoot a couple of snooker games with him, and then you could loosen his tongue with Chianti, which is an expensive word for Italian red wine. And because Duke wanted to learn something that Tony could teach him, he kept Chianti in his room. He took a lesson from Tony in things an ambitious young man should know. Like, look, if you're going to use it on somebody, a .45 automatic's the thing. Don't monkey with the little gun. A .45, because if you hit the shoulder or the leg or somewhere with the little gun, it don't mean nothing. Got to hit the head or the heart. And the guts'll kill him, but he'll live a while first. Maybe long enough to talk, see? But a big slug, wherever it hits, knocks him down like a baseball bat. But if you're carrying a rod, just in case, a .32 automatic'll do. Light, and don't bulge your coat. Oh, sure, those were elementary things, but Duke dug in and got some fine points too. Like how to beat a paraffin test, and if you don't know that, you're better off not to. I'm not giving lessons, just telling about them. Tony was a gunman all the way. He thought shivs were effeminate, fists were for gorillas, Tommies were for morons who couldn't learn to shoot straight with the heater. Why, any day I'd go up against a typewriter with a .45. One shot I'd need, and there'd be time for 3 while he was getting that damn thing swung around and pointed. Duke Evans picked up quite a bit from Tony. One thing he didn't learn, how not to be afraid of Tony. But when he moved in, he thought Tony would be on his side. Tony didn't like Nick, and Duke worked on that. Duke let a couple of years go by. He grew in evil, in stature, and in favor with himself and the gang. He bought himself 2 pistols, obtaining them in such a manner that they could not be traced back to him. He bought himself a rifle, too, but he purchased that openly and talked about it. His occasional hunting trips were for the purpose of finding secluded spots in the woods where he could practice shooting an automatic. Nobody knew about the pistols or his practice with them. For a while, he took over running the strong-arm squad, just telling them whom to see and how much of a job to do on them. He got a kick out of that. Once he planted a pineapple himself that blew the guts out of a cigar store run by a man named Perlman, who decided, against advice, not to job a book on the ponies. That was why the pineapple was put in his store. But the reason Duke Evans did the job in person was that Perlman had said, "Get out of here, punk," to Duke Evans. Duke Evans wasn't a punk anymore. He heard the explosion from several blocks away and thought, "Punk, huh?" He wished Perlman had been in the store when the bomb went off. He pictured it vividly. Because he was standing in a dark alley and didn't have to stay deadpan, the look on his face wasn't nice. Not nice at all. But then Duke Evans wasn't a nice guy. I warned you about that. Then, after a while, he was ready. Ready for the takeover and the gravy train. He'd worked it out, and he wasn't going to be crude and use a gun after all. That was for the cheap torpedoes like Tony. There were reasons why it would be better if Nick's death looked like a hit run. He stole a car one day and kept it under wraps until late at night after Nick had gone home. Then he made his phone call. He'd worked out the angles on that. It was important he saw Nick right away. Something had come up, and since Nick wouldn't ever allow any of his men to come to his home, would Nick please? Well, the details don't matter. It worked out that Nick would get dressed and go out to walk about 2 blocks, too short a distance to bother getting his car out of the garage, and Nick would have to cross at a certain corner. Duke parked the stolen car, with the lights out and the engine turning over lightly, at just the right spot. He could start up when Nick was a third of the way across, and get him whether he tried to go ahead or duck back. There was a light down at the corner, but it was dark where the car was parked. It was darker than he thought. Nick would be coming along any minute now. All of Duke's attention was concentrated on watching for him. He didn't hear the 2 men coming afoot from the opposite direction until they were at the car and one opened a door on either side. One of them was Tony Barria and the other was the Swede. Tony got in beside him and held the .45 in his ribs. Duke remembered what a .45 did to a man. Duke began to sweat. He said, "Listen, Tony, The gun prodded. "Shut up! Drive north!" "Tony, I'll give you—" Swede, in the back seat, raised the butt of his pistol and brought it down in a short, vicious arc. But it wasn't until near dawn, in Springfield, not in hell, that the little red devil came running into the main office, grinning triumphantly and lashing his arrow-tipped tail in high glee. "Just graduated him, boss," he chortled. "Just gave him the final lesson. He knows all about murder now. Got KO'd, but he came to before they got to the bay and took it all in while they were putting the cement tub on his feet. You should have heard him beg till they had to gag him. But he took it all in. He knows all about it. Plenty. Yep, he sure graduated. He sure—" "Good. You brought him along, of course."
"Yep," said the little red devil. "I brought him along all right. I sure brought him along."